It was a foggy evening in London, and the gas lamps cast eerie shadows along Baker Street. Sherlock Holmes sat in his dimly lit sitting room, his violin in hand, lost in thought. The room was permeated with the sweet strains of his music, which always seemed to accompany his moments of deep contemplation. Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted his reverie. Mrs. Hudson, the landlady, entered with a worried expression on her face. "Mr. Holmes, there's a gentleman downstairs who's in desperate need of your services. He says it's a matter of utmost importance." Holmes put down his violin and rose from his chair. "Very well, Mrs. Hudson. Show him up." Moments later, a tall, disheveled man entered the room. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands trembled. He introduced himself as Edward Worthington, a wealthy banker. "Mr. Holmes," he began, "I am in a state of distress. My family heirloom, the Worthington diamond, has been stolen. It's been in my family for generations, and I fear that its loss will bring shame upon us." Holmes motioned for Worthington to sit down and began his questioning. "Tell me everything about the circumstances surrounding the theft," Holmes said. Worthington explained that the diamond had been kept in a locked safe within the family mansion. The only people with access to it were himself, his wife, and their butler, Mr. Higgins. There had been no sign of a break-in, and the rest of the house was undisturbed. Holmes visited the Worthington mansion to examine the scene. He scrutinized the safe, finding no signs of tampering. He interviewed Mrs. Worthington and Mr. Higgins separately, both of whom denied any involvement. However, Holmes noticed that Higgins was unusually nervous and avoided making eye contact. Returning to Baker Street, Holmes told Dr. John Watson, his loyal friend and chronicler, "There's more to this case than meets the eye, Watson. I suspect Mr. Higgins knows more than he's letting on. Tomorrow, we shall visit him and seek the truth." The following day, Holmes and Watson arrived at Mr. Higgins's residence. Under Holmes's intense scrutiny and relentless questioning, Higgins eventually broke down and confessed. He had stolen the diamond, hoping to sell it and escape a life of servitude. Holmes recovered the Worthington diamond and returned it to its rightful owner. Edward Worthington was overjoyed and rewarded Holmes generously for his services. As Holmes and Watson returned to Baker Street, Watson asked, "Holmes, how did you know it was Mr. Higgins?" Holmes smiled and replied, "Elementary, my dear Watson. Mr. Higgins was the only one who knew the combination to the safe, and his nervousness gave him away. Sometimes, the truth is hidden in plain sight." And so, another case was solved by the brilliant detective Sherlock Holmes, leaving London once again in awe of his deductive prowess.